Hey, this is Carl Killo. First video in a long time, been a few months. All right, so I want to talk about this YouTube shooting that happened yesterday. Yesterday was April the 3rd. Today is April the 4th, 2018. Um, so this one kind of gets the conspiracy theory part of my brain tickling. Or if I rather, this is how I think about it. If I was in power, how would I use this incident to either gain more power or to solidify uh, my power so that I'm unassailable by my political opponents? And I think this is one way I would do it if I was one of those people in power. Anytime you have a shooting, you're going to have people clamoring to restrict guns. And also, you're going to have people clamoring anytime they see a company or an organization that they believe is acting wrong. Now, in this day and age, we tend to think of any corporation that's over a certain size as having some, well, an inherently evil characteristics. Let's put it that way. And many people in the United States look to the government to protect them from nasty, evil people that run the corporations. And the government likes this role because it gives them something to do. Because if you don't have anything to do when you work for the government, then the people that are employing you, the people of the state that you work for, the government that you work for, will start to look at you and say, well, what the heck have you done for me lately? And why am I paying you all this money? And why do we need you? And so you're doing nothing. And so we start to come up with little problems for them to solve, whether or not those problems are easily, readily, or appropriately solved by uh, government regulation. And I think the call for government regulation in this case would be um, to get in the offices of a place like YouTube or other social media companies and say, hey, you got to make sure you're treating your people right. We got to be there making sure you're treating your people right. So here's something that we can do for you all, everybody. And we create a new branch of the FCC or another bureaucracy, and then we now have another branch of, well, I think it's pretty fair to call it shadow government at this point, because once a bureaucracy is created, it's really hard to get rid of, like ridiculously hard. It just doesn't happen ever. I mean, you only get rid of branches of bureaucracy when the money starts to run out, and we found a way to basically print money based on our unborn children's future productivity. That's what a bond is. That's what government debt is. We're expecting them to work so damn hard that it won't matter that we're spending their future into the ground now before they even got a chance to run, much less walk, crawl. All right, so here's kind of what I was thinking along that. Follow me down the rabbit hole briefly. So the cry from authoritarians is going to be something like, save us, all of us poor people were being wronged by the capitalist masters. We need more laws and regulations to keep from being harmed. These are heartless people that are taking advantage of us. And just look at this woman who was driven to near insanity, where she felt like she wasn't being heard and she had no voice, so she used a gun to go make herself heard. Politicians be all over that. Gives them something to do, right? Okay, so we have this cry for do something. People in government, you're saviors of all humankind. And the result will be something like a new branch of government, which is just going to be one more ugly, long claw of Cthulhu crushing freedom of choice, freedom of association, freedom for companies to provide something that is valuable. But we're so ready to sacrifice all the great stuff that we've got just to try to make things a little bit better. When we really feel it when kids in schools get shot. And we really want to feel like we're doing something. When someone gets so frustrated to the point that they feel like they need to go use violence because they feel like they've exhausted all of their words. That's a very common thing. And we don't like it when people suffer like that. And so when we see people suffering, we're sympathetic to them, and if we think, well, maybe if we just make this law, that'll help fix it, or at least that'll help fix that particular incident from ever happening again. But you end up building this giant tentacle monstrosity of state. And the Cthulhu state has so many tentacles now, and it doesn't care about you. It cares about the greater good, whatever the hell that is. And you will be sacrificed to the greater good when the opportunity arises for someone who happens to be in charge of that one tentacle of the Cthulhu state at just the right time for them to gain a little bit of power and to look like they're doing something good. They will sacrifice you and throw you under the steamroller just to show how much better they are than you and how much more worthy they are deserving of their government paycheck. This is a machine that feeds on people. You must be very careful and aware of how you let these shootings, these emotional events, things that are going on that are tragic and horrible, but you must be extremely careful about how they affect you. Take a step back and think before you go crying for an answer, because good answers don't come the day after a tragedy. That's impossible. We're all still panicked too much right after something horrible happens. And there's been a lot of horrible things happening in the past year, especially as far as shootings go. So be really careful about how you let these events affect you and stop and think about the general and underlying principles of what you really want. And what do you really want? Well, you want less dead people. So what's the best way to go about that? That's the path we need to be thinking about. Not, oh, Mr. Senator, help me, please. More people are dying. Help! You have all the answers. You were obviously elected by all of us. You're so awesome and popular. Yeah. Use your own mind. Don't throw these problems on top of other people. They will take your freedom away in order to climb the ladder. You never sacrifice a freedom just because you're scared or want to be seen as kind and caring. That's the road that leads to the GDR, the Stasi, KGB, and the Gulag, and a million people in a grave, or more, hundreds of millions under Stalin and Mao and Potpal. These were all centralized authoritarian regimes. And our country is starting to look more and more like that every day. And if you thought the Gulag was horrible, if you thought that millions starving to death in China was horrible, wait till you see the American version of the Gulag. It will be unprecedented. Don't let it come.